Everyone is a theologian. If you ever think about God or who he is or try to figure out what he might be like, well, you're doing theology. So we wanted to explore the real lives of everyday theologians in Houston and explore what it looks like to take your faith outside of Sunday mornings or seminary or Bible study and just into the world, IRL, as the kids say. So welcome to Everyday Theology. Everyday Theology, of course, is an offshoot of our normal podcast, Theology on Air, which is an offshoot of Theology by the Pint. That's the organization here in Houston where we gather together over really interesting ideas around theology, philosophy, faith, and culture, and all with a good beer in our hand. And we like to charitably disagree. You should come. If you have not come and you're interested, go to theologybythepint.org to find out more information about who we are, what we're about, when we're meeting, what we're up to. We have all kinds of interesting topics lined up for 2026. So come and check us out. But we like to get even more in depth in the podcast. So all kinds of topics. And then this offshoot is just talking to real life people who are Christians, but aren't standing at the front of the church, holding up the Bible and maybe teaching. So today's guest is Alec King. I have just met Alec, but I know his wife actually from doing a dance class together. So yes, this is one of the ways that I exercise and keep it sassy, and she does it with me, and she suggested that you might be a great candidate. So anyway, funny small world. So Alec, just tell us a little bit about you and your story of faith.
Sure, thank you. So grew up here in Houston, as you know, met my wife here in Houston from a young age, but was born into a family that would have identified as Christian. I would say a Protestant, background with an interesting background. When you sort of look at their parents, my grandparents, one Baptist and Catholic relationship that stayed that way until their death. That was, over a 55-year marriage. And then a late life conversion and my mom's dad, paired with someone who was, Christianity was maybe more central to my grandmother her whole life. And
so she lived the bulk of her life with a non-believing husband.
Correct.
Oh,
and
wow.
For him to accept Jesus in his 60s. And he died in his 70s. Yeah. It was sort of an interesting story and an interesting sort of shape to watch. And you saw what it was to be patient and consistent and maybe hopeful. So it was was born into a family that actively professed Jesus, but I would say, like a lot of families, maybe a little more active when their kids are young, and they say, "Man, this is important that we be Christians," and I teach them Christianity and I take them to Bible
church.
class. But as life gets busy and we get old, there was probably some drift, and throughout most of what I would say my sort of later elementary, junior high years, I don't really remember attending a lot of church. Or being around a lot of Christians. But if you'd asked me the question, then I'd say, "Oh yeah, I'm a Christian." Wouldn't necessarily have had a good definition for what that meant. But then, then always, to me, the youth group aspect and some of the entertaining things that sometimes get criticized, like, are you really just making this fun time? I'm like, well,
that actually worked.
I came to church for the basketball.
Okay.
There was a basketball, indoor court, and we played all the time, and that's what brought me in. And then all of a sudden I started developing friends there, and then I went on a retreat. I met my future wife there. We were both 16. And it became a bigger and bigger part of my life. And I was baptized. You became it. Later, maybe fast forward the clock another 8 or 10 years in the sort of post-college, when the church could no longer afford a youth minister, I was asked to help. So on a volunteer basis, I kind of stepped into that role for a bit while I was launching a career and a family, but also sort of
that's a lot.
Yeah, so that was my journey, and that was.
And you were saying, like, nothing makes you have to figure out what you believe faster than a bunch of seventh graders.
Until the seventh graders asking you really hard questions to answer. And you're like, that's...
who made God? And
where did God come from? And you're like, well, that's a great question.
I'll get back to you in 2 weeks. Yeah.
Fundamental questions, where it's not just go point at a verse, but let's go start from the beginning. Obviously, one of your recent interviews I saw talking about apologetics. I'm like, well, why is the world the way it is?
Yeah.
And, so that was a real growth moment for me. Really an era where Christianity became a much more important part of how I see myself.
Hey guys, and Sarah Stone here. Sorry to interrupt what I'm sure is a riveting podcast episode, but Theology by the Pint needs your help to continue providing these podcasts, offering our in-person events, and growing so we can bring thoughtful conversation and the hope of the gospel to a world that's increasingly walking away from church and from faith. Now that we're a 501c3 nonprofit, all donations are tax deductible, so we've crunched the numbers, and if each listener of this episode gave just $1 for each episode you listen to, we'd put a huge dent in our annual budget. So consider giving today. Go to theologybythepint.org/give and click the link to donate. Thanks so much. And now back to our show.
See the world.
You said that was the same time you were starting your own family.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing then that you probably made it a bigger priority for your family to actually be going to church. And
absolutely. It helped. So it was interesting. So my kids got to be sort of born and around this youth group activity, and what's funny, the relationships they formed with some of the kids that are now, we call them our bonus kids.
Oh, yeah.
In different social situations, they live with us. They're still big parts of our life.
Yeah. Almost like older siblings, or
and different connections they have depending on what age they were, with somebody that was important in that. And it was an interesting blending of sort of faith and family.
Yeah. Okay, so kind of a lifelong Christian, little drift, and then back into it by the hook of basketball.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit. So let's shift to what you actually do vocationally, and how did you get into that? What's your story there?
Yeah. So a finance person by nature, came out of undergrad and grad school with got an MBA from Stanford, and so
like everyone who doesn't
worked hard and let's go take over the world and all those good capitalistic skills, but that never quite fit. So didn't exactly know where that was headed. Was a consultant until one day a client opportunity was provided, and I got to join the Texas Children's Hospital.
Okay.
And my second week on the job, my college roommate's son, who's the same age as my oldest son, was diagnosed with leukemia.
Oh, wow.
And it was a really interesting entry into what is it we do. So we get to do things I'm really good at in boardrooms and spreadsheets and capital planning, making budgets and rolling out programs. That's great. Except then I would go, but after those meetings were over, I'd go to the 9th floor of the tower, and visit Malachi and visit the, like, it was a really, this is what we do. This is what we deliver. This is the product and service we offer as an entity, so fell in love with healthcare. So been in healthcare now for 2 decades. I'm the CFO of a very large health system. I've been in 4 multi-billion-dollar health systems over the last couple of decades.
Wow.
I'm like I said, one of the senior leaders at the largest one in Houston.
Yeah.
It's interesting because it's mission, right? We're not for profit. We're owned by the citizens of Texas. If you technically sort of sell the legal, we don't have owners. We don't have stocks.
Oh, I guess I never really thought about that.
We're Houston's largest employer. Most people wouldn't guess that. They'd guess Exxon or somebody.
Yeah.
We employ 35,000 Houstonians.
Wow. Well, the Med Center, I guess, is huge.
Well, we have 12 hospitals.
Okay.
So the Med Center is about 30% of our business. Like
I delivered my second child at one of your hospitals. Yeah, I did so much better than the first one, actually. Yes, actually. So. Wow. So it sounds like you really love what you do.
I do love what I do. It's gives me meaning and impact. And it's sort of, as a Christian, it's pretty interwoven to think about healthcare delivery. Right? But it's interesting, but we're not a religious institution.
Sure.
But it sort of still touches on those notes of compassion and
even though you're doing the financial side, that's
my job is literally to be the business leader of a place that has an infinite appetite to spend money on great things. Yeah. But they don't have infinite money.
Okay.
So
figuring out where it's going to come from and how
much can we do and when can we do it, and sometimes the answer is either no or not yet or maybe a little less. And that's my primary role is resource allocation, short and long term. Yeah. To deliver on this sort of big mission that we carry.
That's interesting that you think of it as missional. I love that. Can you think of, I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this. If you can't, that's okay. But can you think of any stories of times that you've like your faith and your values because of your faith have kind of entered into the work that you've done, or
for sure. You can't kind of sort of look at benevolence and look at the teachings of Christ without caring for people and care for their needs first. So, I mean, I do think that it's interwoven there, but then there's also interesting things to say, but we're not a Christian organization. We don't just take care of Christians. We're not right. So then it gets into some of the conflicts you might have to face, and like, okay, this is not an evangelical opportunity. This is this is living your faith at a non-secular institution.
A secular institution.
Institution, yeah. And that's interesting too. And if you think about particularly the communities most involved. So if you're talking about the doctor community, we employ 6,000 doctors, scientists, right? And science and Christianity have an interesting relationship, and there's all versions of it, but you can imagine that it's not a universal, common set of things we agree on. Right. But then, we're a not-for-profit, and our board is made up of mostly community members volunteering their time that are very beneficial, and they very much view it as a mission, and they're very absolutely, and generally, because we're in Houston, Texas, pretty deeply conservative values. So that's an interesting, sometimes collision of values you gotta deal with. And we're saying, we just want to keep everybody healthy.
Yes.
How about we still focus on that?
That's the baseline.
Let's focus on everybody's whole health. So there's certainly, as a mouthpiece, as someone, we get a lot of public scrutiny.
Yeah.
Right. So, we treat a lot of patients, including those sponsored by the government. So we receive government fundings. We have a not-for-profit tax status. So, what that translates to is there's a whole lot of people that feel they can hold you accountable as an institution. I always tell people I have more bosses than maybe anybody else in Houston.
Oh, wow.
And you're accountable to regulators and government officials and donors and families and 35,000 employees, right? Like it's, and they all have opinions. And you're trying to constantly stay focused on the mission. What is the mission? And in our case, the delivery of care. But as a Christian, there's times when I'm like, well, I may have an opinion on this one, but is that a relevant opinion?
Yeah.
Is that an opinion that needs to be brought to bear on this decision?
Have you ever had a situation maybe with something, I don't know, sort of quasi-political or anything where you've had to kind of say, like, I can't be a part of this, or...
I'll take one that's probably, every one I could mention would therefore by definition be controversial, but even when we're deciding, are we going to mandate vaccines? Yeah. Right. Okay. The science is selling us this thing, but then we have, principles in play, and what should be right, and whose choice is it? And that had to be a hard roller coaster. You can imagine during those few years in particular, there were some real strongly held opinions. It was really difficult to navigate. Right? I won't necessarily come down on one side of that. I'm not here to express an opinion on it. My good doctor buddies are all probably upset if they see this, that I didn't come out and say vaccines for the win. You sort of really did have to balance really important human principle, right? And if this is important to you, am I going to tell you your job depends on it? And is that in the best interest?
Did that ever happen in Houston?
It did.
Okay.
It did. Most healthcare entities required.
Okay. It's only been a few years, and I already have sort of forgotten.
Most of them came up with an appeals process.
Okay, that's right.
There were different.
I helped some people write their appeals. Okay.
On you watched in some institutions, it felt like, I won't name names or say anything about my institution, but I will say those appeals seem to resonate. And we're maybe some were categorically denied. We'll say yes to everybody, we'll say no to everybody, or we'll actually have a process where some group of people comes together and tries to weigh it. And everything in between. So
gosh, that had to be hard.
As a Christian and sort of thinking through, which decisions when am I going to go against groupthink, right? So, okay, when somebody suggests that let's mandate pronouns for everybody on their Zoom. And
that was another one,
That's one that I'd say, well, mandate's a tough one. I'm not here to tell you what you should do. But, my personal beliefs, wouldn't include that anybody was made the wrong anything.
Yes.
Right? So I'm not going to overly, emphasize pronouns, and I'm not going to put them on mine. Right? And I don't...
And did you get heat for that?
So I had to, I think because of my position in the organization, wouldn't say I caught heat for it.
Okay.
I would say there was an obligation to say something. Because a lot of
I like that.
You know, and if you got folks that are in sort of middle layer up earlier in their career, and they're still trying to climb. They can't say
something.
Like, I want to say it, but I'm facing a real term. I mean, you know, and that's having courage to when is it I'm going to say where are my boundaries?
Yeah,
yeah. Right? And I think the more senior you get, the more of an obligation you have to lead and show people that it's okay. Like,
yes.
you know, you can say it respectfully.
Yes.
You can absolutely, like, I'm not here to impose my beliefs on anybody else, but what you've just suggested, whatever it is, I'm not going to be able to, I can either step out of this decision, or I'm actually going to say, no, we shouldn't make that decision. You know?
Yeah.
And it is based on my own beliefs. So we got to find some ground that respects everybody's right to make choices.
Yeah.
Right. So
no, that's really interesting. And you're doing that out of your own conviction, but also on behalf of those that aren't as free to say it because they haven't worked their way up and maybe have the kind of respect that you do.
It's always amazing what happens after that, right?
Okay.
So it's the meeting after that. It's the next day when somebody says, I'm so glad you said that.
Yes.
I was feeling that, but I just didn't feel like I could say it.
Yeah.
You know, and you're like, well, okay, I'll take that compliment. Great.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how we get you comfortable saying it next time.
Yeah.
Because if we're all quiet and we all sort of suppress and maybe we even go along with things that we don't
then the crazy wins. Yeah.
Then that doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Man, that's a lot. Do you feel like, it sounds like you're pretty open about your faith in your job? Do you think most people know, oh, this guy's a Christian, like he calls himself a Christian?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't go out of my way to label it, but it's I'm never shy about it.
Yeah.
So it comes up, and you know, reputations proceed, and it doesn't take long. I mean, especially if you start figuring out. Well, the first time I refer to my bonus kids, and then your first question is, "What's a bonus kid?"
Yeah.
Well, there's these like army of 25 to 30-year-olds that used to be 15 to 20, and you know, that's my kid. Yeah. So I don't do anything to hide it, and I think that's something that every Christian in some level, usually earlier in life, may have to do. Like, well, I will never forget going to a Bible study in high school and being embarrassed to carry my Bible.
Okay.
People are going to know.
Yeah.
Right? Now, looking back, you know, I wish I could like talk directly to myself and go, you want people to know. Right?
Yes.
But
it's also good that you felt that because you know now people in a sort of different, you know, part of their path of faith, that's how they feel.
Yeah, being able to speak up and say, "This is this is how I feel." This is how I feel. You know, that takes courage, and courage is built over time. I have a lot of courage on it, but I've been doing it for a while.
So it sounds like you have had some opportunities maybe to share your faith or even evangelize. I don't know how that works in that setting.
It's tricky. So I actually always ask to change settings first of all. So I get asked if I get asked at work, in my office, in a meeting or whatever. A question that gets just a little bit down the path of, well, why do you believe what you believe? Or tell me what kind of Christian you are. What does that mean, right? Then I'll just say, I would love to have this conversation with you, but I'm not going to have this conversation with you as the CFO of Orion.
Right, we'll take that hat off. Yeah.
What are you doing for coffee tomorrow?
Yeah.
You know, and it's weird because my job really doesn't have hours, but for some reason, like it just feels more separation. Like, why don't we meet at 5 o'clock? Why don't we have a beer and talk about it?
Yeah.
Right. Or
now you're talking our language.
Yeah, let's have a coffee. I'm happy to share. I want to actually. I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
But I won't. You know, I've got to be a little bit cautious to say this is certainly not an opinion of my employer.
Right. Right.
So and you're allowed to disagree. You're allowed to think I'm crazy. You know, but.
And I'm not going to lord it over you in any kind of way, or result
in any sort of favoritism, right?
Right.
Like there's all kinds of traps with trying.
I hate that we have to think about all that,
but you know, especially as a highly scrutinized leader in a highly scrutinized organization, you're like, well, you can't. And then also, to be fair, I don't want anybody to be influenced because their boss thinks this.
Right, out of fear or something.
That's the wrong reason to care what I think about eternity.
Yes.
You know. Let's figure out a way to separate from all that and talk about
what's real and what matters.
Struggles with eternity and here's what I think. And here's at least where I tell me it becomes much more
conversational. Yeah. I love all of that. This is great. What are you kind of studying or thinking about in your own faith journey right now? Like, are you part of a Bible study? Or are you going through a particular book of the Bible? Like, what's interesting to you right now?
Yeah. So I say most interesting to me right now is we're kind of at a pivot with my children in that they're all kind of becoming adults, right? So
how old are your kids?
20, 17 is about to be 18 in a couple weeks. 15 and 14.
Okay.
Right. So we have had we had some good conversations over this holiday break with the college kid home, and we really had some time to really. So I intentionally spend one-on-one time with them that they know, like, you're going to go take a 2-hour walk with Dad.
Okay.
Right. Like, and it's not optional.
That makes me think of all the camp, going to Christian camp, and they're like, you're one-on-one.
Oh yeah, no, it was like, you're getting a one-on-one. You know what's happening. And it's like, guys, we've got to start thinking of ourselves as a family of 6 adults, right? Like these, different, feelings you bring in, or the way we interact with one another, or make time for one another. It's about to all be choice, guys.
Yeah.
And I can point to adult relationships, family relationships that are not that close, and some that are super close. If our goal is to be super close,
yes,
it has to start now. You're in the last, Cade's he's already living in college. Like, it's going to be different in 2 years.
Yeah.
Right. And you're about to go to college. Right. And you're about to start choosing whether or not you go to church.
Yeah.
Right. For example. Right. Like,
what you believe.
These are adult decisions, and we're there. So let's start, interacting differently. So I think a lot of focus on what does it mean to make your faith yours. All my kids have chosen to be baptized, and that's fantastic. And we're very intentional not to
like push
that. Like, that's a choice, right? That's a you, and they all did it at very different timelines for them. So I take some joy in that, to say, hey, it was clearly driven by them, because they all came up with different answers. But I am very happy that they all choose to believe. But now it's like, but I think back to me in that era, and like, are you going to choose to put it into practice now? Mm-hmm. Like, when you
every day in the trudgery
of in your journey, right? So especially as they move out of the house, right?
Yeah.
I always got to look at those big fulcrums. Like, at some point, you turn 16, and you go from your parents know what you're doing to they know what you say you're doing. Yeah. Right. And then you go to, like, I moved out of the house. I don't even tell you what I did today.
Right.
Like, I'm not, so it's not lie or not lie. I don't even have to tell you. You didn't ask. Like, those are big moments. So that's where a lot of my energy and focused on. We have, you can base that in scripture and different stories, but the focus has been on, what does it mean for a young adult to stop living, maybe their parents' faith or an influenced faith, and choose how important is it going to be to you.
I think so many people go off to college, and now we have these terms, these sort of fancy terms like deconstruction and reconstruction. Yeah. But everybody, but even before we were using that language, had something like that happen, where when you become an adult, maybe it's college, maybe it's before or after, where you kind of say that same thing to yourself. Do I believe this because my parents, not just about religion, maybe even like, do I vote this way because my parents did? Do I act this way? Is this,
I remember the first time I answered I'm always say yes to the Mormons when they knock on the door, because I'm like, man, how cool for you guys to be spending this time spreading your faith at this age. Like, I admire it. I respect it. I don't share a lot of the beliefs. But I'm like, tell me about it. But the first time I went through that, I was probably, 20.
Okay.
And man, it challenged some real big things. And then, and my favorite was an older lady in our church that said, well, what all do you have to agree upon to be saved? And that was real interesting. I was like, wow, we do disagree on a lot of things, but we don't disagree on Jesus. Sort of. Whatever.
That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, but it really, again, the important part was like, wow, there's things I thought I knew about where I stood that I haven't explored as much as I maybe thought.
Yeah. So being the CFO of this large healthcare organization, as a Christian, you talked about this a little bit, but I ask everybody that we do these with, what's the hardest part about being a Christian in your industry?
Yeah, I think the hardest part about being a Christian in my industry is just with science. There's a scientific, and I'll use the capital S science, right? It's just become a dogma in many ways, right? Like, you're either you believe this and it's not tolerated. Like, if you ever choose to question the basis of climate change or something, like, you just committed a heresy. Yeah. And I don't, by the way, I'm not saying anything about climate change, but I mean, just there's these points that
you're in a safe space,
it's
Alec.
Its own religion, right? Yes. Like, and you're like, okay, so I kind of do work in a religious setting.
Isn't that interesting? Religion. It's a whole different religion.
And, whether you're talking about the transgender issues or whatever, there's just
I wondered about asking you about that. I didn't want to get you in trouble, but
I definitely won't take a strong, position on it, with especially with any names or representing anybody other than my own personal views.
Yeah.
But I just say, it's a tough one, right? When you say, if I just do the math, 75% of our faculty would probably, ideologically split in a pretty strong cluster to a left that would say, be very supportive of a transgender ideology. Mm-hmm. Because we live in Houston, Texas, 55% of my non-physician employees would probably lean a little farther to the lean right, but not be way right.
Sure.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Like metropolitan city everywhere. Right. You go down to my, my governance or my community leaders involvement, then we get a little farther right.
Okay.
Right. And you're like, okay. And by the way, we actually have some real issues, right? Like no, I can't completely ignore this field, because what happens when, when someone shows up and from a trauma accident, but they've already had,
transition surgery
all of a
or
sudden,
something.
like one of my favorite or most interesting, there was a lot of media attention on this one. And there was a media that was intentionally trying to prove the hypothesis that all hospitals were out there supporting this.
Okay.
Right? And they dug up everything that they thought could be a case for it. And they had like 4 from MD Anderson. Like, what do you think MD Anderson's doing on transgender issues?
Yeah.
Well, if someone who's transitioned or whatever you want to call it shows up and has to have a mastectomy, you better believe that we hit the same codes. Like all of a sudden you can avoid it all.
Yes.
It's not just an issue for a pediatric hospital, but I will say, man, it was an uncomfortable time a few years ago to be Texas Children's. And I was kind of glad at that point I wasn't in a children's hospital.
Yeah.
Because you just have really entrenched positions on all your constituents, and you're trying to find what's right and you're trying to promote health.
Yeah.
But it is, those get really difficult.
I bet. Goodness. Well, I appreciate you sharing even all of that. Do you have any, just as we close out, words of advice or encouragement for other people in your field that are believers and are kind of facing some of this same?
Well, I guess I'll sort of double back to the point that it takes some courage. And I would say the biggest challenge I see is that Christians not speaking up. Right?
Okay.
And saying, well, if it's politically sensitive, it's easier just to not make my point of view clear. And I'll stand here and go along by consensus or by assumed consent, right? And a decision starts to lean a certain way, and it starts to begin. And so I think that's true whether you're talking, right or left ideologically. We can't have extremes lead it, because anybody that's in the middle doesn't want to be controversial.
Right. Or lose their job.
That's how we end up in a polarized setting, right? Where like every single
the only
issue,
people that are speaking.
There's only thing that has, it can only be 2 choices. When in reality, and on most issues, most of us fall somewhere in the middle and say there's,
but we're too quiet.
Right. But if the folks that believe that are always silent because it's too risky to be labeled an extremist, that, and I just, whether I'd say it broadly or I'd say to individuals is like, if you don't speak up, no one will. And I would also then say, and you might be surprised who you inspire if you do speak up. I've speak up quite a bit, and I've never received somebody come after me to the negative. I've only ever received, in many, many examples, that people say, I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
I was feeling it and I didn't say it. And thank you. So, I think you'd be, I think most people would be surprised if they take a little bit more courage to say, as a Christian, I think X.
Yes.
It might inspire something.
Yeah. I love that. Well, thank you for doing this. This is great. I am inspired just thinking about, I love hearing the stories of people that are believers that are out in the world doing things like healthcare. So thank you for joining us. And if you're listening and you want to know more information about, like I said, who we are and what we do, check out our website, theologybythepint.org. And until we see you next time, we encourage you, as always, to question freely, think deeply, and disagree as needed.